Jake sprawled over Princess Zara Lynn, the hottest royal in the galaxy, her emerald skin glinting under eldery moonlight. His shoulder burned, blood gushing from a gaping wound, staining her silken gown. His mind reeled, unable to grasp how it came to this. It all started with a cursed mission: protect this fierce princess from assassins. Now, with a traitor's blade lurking just steps away, Jake's only thought was keeping her alive, no matter the cost. The Orion 7 space station hung suspended in the void, a gleaming fortress of steel and glass shimmering against the endless darkness. Inside the classified briefing room, the blue glow of tactical screens cast shadows across Jake Hawk Anderson's face, highlighting the faint scar running along his left cheek. He stood tall, arms crossed, a dagger etched with the names of fallen comrades hanging silently at his hip. The air was thick with the scent of metal and tension, as if the room itself were waiting for a spark to ignite. The Interstellar Alliance Council, composed of 5 representatives from different species, sat around a table carved from meteoric alloy. General Elena Marquez, humanity's delegate, rose to her feet, her sharp gaze sweeping over Jake. "Commander Anderson," she said, her voice as unyielding as steel but laced with urgency, "we're facing a threat that could unravel the Alliance." Jake raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. He had little patience for the grandiose words of politicians. Instead, he observed, noting every detail. The way the elderly representative, a tall, lean man with blue skin, clenched his hands as if restraining something, or how the Vren delegate, with their 6-lidded eyes, blinked rapidly, calculating. Jake knew this mission was no simple task. Otherwise, they wouldn't have called him, a man who'd survived battlefields even nightmares dared not touch. Marquez activated a holographic device. The image of Princess Zara Lynn materialized, her emerald skin glinting, her golden eyes sharp, and her intricately braided silver hair cascading like a moonlit stream. Jake paused, not just because of her beauty, though he had to admit it made his heart skip a beat, but because of the look in her holographic eyes, proud, yet tinged with unease, like someone bearing a burden too heavy to carry alone. "Princess Zara Lynn of the Eldery is the key to peace," Marquez continued. "She's about to ascend the throne, and her pro-alliance stance is what we need to keep the species united. But her brother, Prince Varen, is plotting to overthrow her. He wants to plunge the Eldery into war, severing all ties with us." The Eldery representative, Therian, spoke up, his voice smooth but cold, like a bell ringing in a cavern. "Varen leads the radical faction, those who believe the Eldery must dominate the galaxy. We have evidence of assassination attempts targeting Zara Lynn. If she falls, war is inevitable." Jake felt the familiar surge of adrenaline. He'd faced ferocious enemies on desolate planets, but a political conspiracy within an alien royal family was a different kind of battlefield. "What's my mission?" he asked, his voice low, not wasting a single word. Marquez handed him a data device, its light reflecting in his deep blue eyes. "Protect Zara Lynn at all costs," she said. "Get her to her coronation alive. If she lives, the Alliance lives. If she dies, everything we've built crumbles." Jake skimmed the data, quickly memorizing details about the Eldery, Varen, and Zara Lynn. Part of him wanted to refuse. Politics wasn't his game, and he'd lost too many comrades to believe in promises of peace. But the memory of those fallen, their names etched on his dagger, made turning away impossible. "I need full autonomy," he said, his gaze locked on Marquez. "No interference, no oversight. If the Eldery want to play dirty, I need to be free to hit back." Therian's brow furrowed, his blue skin darkening slightly, but Marquez raised a hand to silence him. "Granted, Hawk. Full autonomy. But remember, Zara Lynn isn't just a princess. She's our last hope." Jake nodded, slipping the data device into his pocket. As he left the briefing room, the hallway's light illuminated his tall, imposing figure, casting a shadow that spoke of the solitude of a soldier always ready for the next fight. He didn't know who Zara Lynn was beyond her hologram, but he knew one thing. This mission would change everything. Jake Hawk Anderson stepped out of the transport shuttle, his tactical boots hitting the eldery ground with a soft thud. The air was warm and humid, carrying the sweet scent of alien flowers and rich earth, a stark contrast to the smoke and metal of the battlefields he knew. Before him, the eldery royal palace rose like a dream. Crystalline spires stretched skyward, reflecting the light of two silver moons hanging in the sky. Glowing ancient trees, their leaves shimmering like emeralds, lined stone pathways, and a river of light flowed lazily through the plaza. Beautiful, Jake thought, but beauty often comes with danger. He tightened the strap of his pack, his sharp blue eyes scanning the surroundings with a hunter's precision. His special forces training kept him from relaxing. He noticed an elderly guard standing slightly off position near a side gate, his gaze darting toward the crowd. A small, spherical device hovered near the eastern wall. Not a light, likely a sensor or automated weapon. A shadowed corner behind, a massive stone statue, untouched by moonlight, made him frown. Perfect spot for an ambush, he muttered, his hand brushing the dagger engraved with the names of fallen comrades at his hip. An elderly guard, tall and clad in shimmering light armor, led him across the plaza to the main hall. Jake memorized every detail. 3 exits for high windows and a narrow hallway to the left that might lead to the rear palace. A faint metallic scent, out of place among the floral sweetness, heightened his alertness. Stay sharp, Hawk, he told himself, his survival instincts refusing to overlook any detail. The main hall opened like a cavern of light, its ceiling carved with intricate patterns that scattered moonlight into shimmering streaks. Princess Zara stood on a raised platform, a living statue. Her flowing blue silk gown hugged her form, accentuating her glistening emerald skin and perfect curves. Her intricately braided silver hair cascaded like a stream, and her golden eyes locked on Jake, sharp yet tinged with curiosity. Around her stood a group of guards and advisors, all tall, their skins sparkling under the light, their gazes haughty as if Jake were some strange creature from a distant world. One guard, Kelsey, stepped forward, a smirk curling his lips. "This is the protector the Alliance sent," he said, his voice smooth but sharp as a blade. "A human with a frail body, no technology, nothing. How will he protect the princess? By running away." A few guards chuckled, their laughter echoing in the hall. Jake didn't flinch, but his eyes swept over Kelsey, noting every detail. His stance, his right hand near an energy weapon, and the overconfidence that could be a weakness. Zara raised a hand, a graceful but commanding gesture that silenced the laughter. "Enough, Kelsey," she said, her voice clear yet weighted with authority. Her gaze shifted to Jake, studying him as if reading an ancient tome. "Who are you, and why does the Alliance believe you can protect me?" Jake stepped forward, his boots echoing on the stone floor. He stood tall, refusing to bow, a move that drew frowns from some advisors. "Jake Anderson, call sign Hawk, Alliance Special Forces," he said, his voice low and deliberate, each word measured. "I'm here to protect you, Princess Zara, from any threat, outside or within." He emphasized within, his gaze flickering to Kelsey and the guards, a warning unspoken. "I don't make grand promises. I only promise you'll survive to your coronation." Zara tilted her head, her silver hair glinting in the light. "A human," she said softly, her tone laced with doubt. "Do you think you can understand the dangers of our world? Enemies who wield not just weapons, but words and shadows." Jake's response was calm, but sharp as his dagger. "I've survived planets where shadows swallow entire armies. I'm not here to understand your world. I'm here to keep you alive." His cold, steely gaze made Kelsey instinctively tighten his grip, as if threatened by the confidence of this frail human. As they spoke, Jake kept scanning. The spherical device on the ceiling hummed faintly. An advisor near Zara, hand hidden in their robe, moved too slowly, as if concealing something. The metallic scent grew stronger, now mixed with a faint whiff of burnt energy, a sign of a charged weapon. Jake shifted slightly, positioning himself to shield Zara if needed, though she hadn't noticed. Kelsey laughed loudly, stepping closer to Jake, flaunting his superior height. Surviving on Eldery isn't a game for humans, he mocked. Our gravity will crush you before our enemies do. Princess, why rely on someone like this? Zara Lynn didn't answer immediately. Her gaze lingered on Jake, a spark of curiosity in her eyes, as if searching for something deeper in the man before her. Jake felt her stare, but didn't let it distract him. He opened his mouth to respond to Kelsey when a blinding red flash erupted from the side door on the left, followed by a deafening blast. The stone floor shook, dust and debris scattering. Jake reacted instantly, lunging toward Zara Lynn, his strong arm wrapping around her, pulling them both behind a large stone pillar. "Get down," he roared, his dagger already in hand, its blade glinting in the chaotic light. His eyes scanned the hall, pinpointing the source of the flash, noting the guards' positions and the nearest exit. The elderly guards scrambled, some drawing energy weapons, others diving for cover. Kelsey, caught off guard, shouted, "Protect the princess!" But it was Jake who shielded Zara Lynn, his body taut, ready for any threat. Dust and smoke filled the air, the echoing boom fading into chaos. Zara Lynn, pressed to the floor, looked up, her golden eyes wide as they met Jake's. In that moment, amid the dust and danger, her gaze held no trace of a proud princess's doubt, but a flicker of awe, as if seeing him for the first time. A warrior, not a frail human. Jake returned her gaze, and for a fleeting second, he felt a connection, fragile yet powerful, like the eldery moonlight cutting through the darkness. The smoke still lingered in the main hall of the elderly palace, a veil dimming the light from the crystalline spires. The shouts of the guards had faded, replaced by the urgent clatter of footsteps and the hum of energy weapons powering up. Jake Hawk Anderson crouched behind a stone pillar, his dagger gripped tightly, his body taut like a predator ready to strike. Princess Zara Lynn sat beside him, her breathing slightly quickened, but her golden eyes burned with resolve, untouched by panic. Jake scanned the hall, cataloging every detail. Debris from the explosion scattered near the side door where the red flash had originated. An elderly guard lay motionless, his shimmering armor scorched, and Kelsey barking orders to the remaining guards, his eyes darting as if seeking an escape. Jake's brow furrowed, his special forces instincts sounding an alarm. This wasn't random, he muttered, rising and pulling Zara Lynn to her feet, his grip on her arm gentle but firm. "We need to get out of here. This place isn't safe." Zara Lynn nodded, but stood tall, adjusting her flowing blue silk gown, reclaiming the regal poise of a princess. "I don't flee in my own palace," she said, her voice clear and sharp, honed by duty. "Whoever dared attack me will pay." "What do you see, Hawk?" Jake glanced at her, quietly impressed by her composure amid the chaos. He pointed toward the side door, where smoke still rose. "That flash wasn't a standard weapon. It was precise, aimed directly at you. Someone knew exactly where you'd be." He stepped toward the nearest debris, picking up a curved piece of metal, its surface glinting with eldery energy circuits. The acrid smell of charred metal mixed with something else, a chemical scent he recognized from battlefields, used in cloaked surveillance devices. "This wasn't a random attack," he said, his voice low. "Someone inside the palace is behind it." Zara Lynn stepped closer, her bare feet silent on the stone floor, her eyes fixed on the metal fragment in Jake's hand. "Inside," she repeated, her voice softer, tinged with unease but still commanding. "You're accusing someone human. Be careful with your words. These are my loyal guards." Jake met her gaze, unflinching. "Loyal or not, I don't care," he said, his tone blunt but not disrespectful. "I care about keeping you alive." In this, he held up the fragment, letting moonlight glint off its circuits, is advanced eldery tech, military or royal grade. "Who in the palace has access to this?" Zara Lynn's hand tightened, her necklace humming faintly, as if reacting to her emotions. She looked away, her gaze sweeping over the guards clearing the scene, then lingering on Kelsey, who was speaking to an advisor in a corner. Some disagree with the path I've chosen, she said, her voice low, almost to herself. I want peace for Eldery to stand with the Alliance. But not everyone shares that vision. Jake's mind pieced the clues together, recalling General Marquez's words on Orion 7. Prince Varen, her brother, wanted to overthrow her. Varen, he said, his voice steady, his eyes locked on Zaralin. He's behind this, isn't he? I've heard he calls humans weaklings unworthy of alliance, wants to break ties. An assassination of a pro-peace princess would clear his path. Zaralin turned away, moonlight illuminating her perfect features, but Jake caught a flicker of pain in her eyes. Varen is my brother, she said, her voice trembling briefly before she regained control. He has his own ideals, but I don't want to believe he'd go this far. An assassination? In the palace of our ancestors? She shook her head, but doubt had crept into her tone. Jake stepped closer, keeping a respectful distance, but close enough for her to feel the sincerity in his words. Princess, I'm not here to judge your family, he said, his voice low and earnest. But I've seen what happens when emotions blind people to the truth. If Varen wants you out of the way, he won't stop. I need you to trust me, at least on this. Zaralin studied him, her golden eyes searching his deep blue ones. After a moment's silence, she nodded, a small gesture heavy with acceptance. I'll give you a chance to prove it, Hawk, she said, her voice proud but with a hint of openness. But if you're right, and Varen is behind this, I'll face it myself. Eldery do not forgive traitors, even kin. Jake nodded, his respect for her deepening. He pocketed the metal fragment, determined to find more evidence. Then we move fast, he said, his tone pragmatic. Varen might have people in the palace. I'll check the surveillance systems and secret entrances. You need to stay close, but only with guards I trust. Zaralin raised an eyebrow, a faint smile, the first since they met, crossing her lips. You're giving me orders in my own palace, human? She asked, her tone teasing yet challenging. Jake responded with a rare, genuine half-smile. Not orders, princess. Just keeping my promise to the Alliance and to myself. You'll live, no matter what it takes. Before Zaralin could reply, Kalesy approached, his face now grim, though his eyes still held suspicion. Princess, we've secured the scene, he said, pointedly ignoring Jake. The attack seems to be from a malfunctioning device. No sign of an enemy. Jake turned, his gaze icy. Malfunction? He repeated, a hint of sarcasm in his voice. A malfunctioning device that targeted the princess with military-grade tech? I don't buy it. He stepped closer to Kalesy, his voice low and menacing. Who is responsible for security today? And who has access to the armory? The air in the palace hall froze, the lingering smoke from the attack hanging like a specter as the guard's footsteps echoed in the chaos. Kalesy opened his mouth to respond, but an elderly advisor, his blue skin wrinkled, hurriedly intervened. Commander Anderson, now is not the time for accusations, he said, his voice shaky but attempting authority. We must get the princess to safety before more danger arises. Zaralin, standing behind Jake, adjusted her blue silk gown, her golden eyes scanning the hall with heightened alertness. He's right, she said, her voice regal but urgent. The palace is no longer safe. Hawk, what do you suggest? Jake surveyed the scene once more, noting the debris and the spherical device on the ceiling. He knew the attacker, possibly Varen, wouldn't stop. We need a secure location, off the grid, he said, his voice firm and decisive. A hidden base, unknown to anyone, even your guards. His eyes flicked to Kalesy, silently adding, especially you. Zaralin nodded, a glimmer of trust in her eyes despite her regal demeanor. I know a place, she said softly. An ancient stronghold in an extinct volcano, built by our ancestors to protect the royal family in times of war. Only I know the entrance. She paused, her gaze sweeping over the guards. But I'll go with you alone, Hawk. No one else. Kalesy's brow furrowed, ready to protest, but Zaralin's icy stare silenced him. Jake didn't hesitate, grabbing his pack and gesturing to her. Let's move, he said curtly. before the enemy strikes again. Jake Hawk Anderson slipped through the glowing forest, his tactical boots touching the ground as silently as a shadow. The emerald light from shimmering leaves flickered across the scar on his left cheek, highlighting the ever-watchful glint in his deep blue eyes. Princess Zara Lynn followed closely, her steps light yet resolute, her ancestral necklace humming softly as she ducked under low branches. The eldery night thrummed with the chirping of insects and the wail of wind through rocky crevices, but Jake heard only his steady heartbeat, cold, controlled, and Zara Lynn's breathing, closer than he cared to admit. They had just survived 2 ambushes. The first was a cloaked drone, its blazing red energy beam cutting through the dark. Jake caught its faint hum and yanked Zara Lynn into a ditch, feeling the warmth of her emerald skin for a fleeting moment. The second was 3 elderly assassins striking from the shadows. Jake neutralized them with his dagger and fists, their blood staining the blade, but none reached Zara Lynn. Now, as they reached the entrance to the secret stronghold, a crevice hidden behind a silver-lit waterfall, exhaustion gnawed at Jake's bones, but his survival instincts refused to let him rest. Zara Lynn touched the stone, her fingers tracing ancient runes. A sharp crack echoed, and the crevice parted, revealing a hallway carved from volcanic rock, moonlight slipping through cracks to weave shimmering patterns. "This is the legacy of our ancestors," she said, her voice low, steeped in royal pride. "Only elderly blood can unlock it. You're the first outsider to see it, Hawk." Jake scanned the hallway, checking for signs of surveillance. "I'm honored by the privilege," he replied dryly, though a flicker of respect passed through his eyes as they met hers. He gestured for her to enter, his grip on the dagger unwavering. Inside, the air was frigid, the scent of damp stone mingling with faint forest florals carried on their clothes. Jake set his pack down, checking his gear, his gaze never straying from the shadows. Zara Lynn sat on a stone ledge, her silver hair glinting, but her golden eyes were distant, as if wrestling a storm within. She spoke, her voice sharp as a blade, yet tinged with a tremor. "You don't hesitate," she said, her gaze piercing him. "2 brushes with death, and you're unshaken. What makes a human like you fearless?" Jake paused, his eyes lingering on the dagger, where moonlight glinted off the etched names of fallen comrades. "Fear doesn't keep you alive," he said, his voice low and measured. "I fight for the mission, to keep you breathing, to hold the Alliance together. Humans," he hesitated, then continued, softer, "we learn to rise, even when the universe crushes us. That's what keeps me going." Zara Lynn rose, stepping closer, moonlight draping her emerald skin like liquid silver. "Elderly don't rise," she said, her voice proud yet edged with bitterness. "We build empires, then tear them apart. I want to break that cycle, Hawk. Peace, not the war Varen craves." Her gaze cut through him, sharp as if peeling back his soul. "But tell me, why do you believe in peace? A man with a dagger carved with death." Her question struck deep, a blade aimed at his core. Jake met her eyes, unflinching. "Because I know what war steals," he said, his voice steady but sharp. "Every name on this dagger is a lesson. Peace isn't a fantasy, Zara Lynn. It's the only thing worth bleeding for." His gaze softened. "I saw it in you, standing tall in that hall." Zara Lynn froze, her eyes flickering as if his words had touched a hidden wound. "You see too much," she whispered, her voice low, almost accusatory. She stepped closer, the space between them a mere heartbeat. "I'm not used to being seen, especially by a human." Jake's lips curved into a rare, genuine smile, free of mockery. "Good," he said, his voice low. "I'm not here to flatter you. I'm here to keep you alive, and I'm at my best when I know who I'm fighting for." They stood bathed in moonlight, its glow encircling them like a shield against the darkness. Zara Lynn reached out, her emerald fingers trembling as they clasped Jake's hand, not as a princess, but as someone seeking an anchor in a storm. "I don't know who to trust," she said softly, a crack in her regal armor. "But you make me want to try." Jake felt the warmth of her touch, a strange current stirring within him. He didn't grip her hand, only let her hold his eyes locked on hers. "Trust me tonight, at least," he said, his voice steady, no empty promises. "Tomorrow, we face Varen. Together." Zara Lynn nodded, a spark of resolve in her eyes, her hand lingering a moment longer before releasing him. The eldery moonlight bore witness, whispering of a bond forged between a human and an alien princess, fragile, forbidden, yet unbreakable. Deep within the secret stronghold buried in the heart of the volcano, eldery moonlight filtered through a stone crevice, casting a glow across Jake Hawk Anderson's face, highlighting the scar on his left cheek. He sat on a stone bench, his fingers tracing a data device salvaged from the debris of the attack in the main hall. The hologram screen flickered, displaying intricate eldery code, but Jake, with his special forces experience, recognized a familiar pattern, a signature of military surveillance systems. "Not a coincidence," he muttered, his deep blue eyes icy with focus. Princess Zara Lynn stood near the crevice, her emerald skin shimmering under the moonlight, her hands clasped tightly as if restraining a storm of emotions. Her ancestral necklace hummed faintly, like tiny bells echoing her unease. After their earlier moment of closeness, she maintained her regal poise, but her golden eyes now held a flicker of doubt, as if she were bracing for a painful truth. "What have you found, Hawk?" she asked, her voice clear, but weighted with the authority of a princess awaiting answers. Jake looked up, his gaze locking onto hers. "Evidence," he said, his voice low and certain. "The debris from the attack carries control codes from the Royal Armory. Only a handful have access, and your brother, Varen, tops the list." He activated the hologram, revealing a covert recording. Varen's voice, cold and sharp, issuing orders to a team of assassins. "Eliminate Zara Lynn before the coronation. The Alliance must have no chance." Zara Lynn's hands tightened, her eyes flashing with a pang of pain, quickly replaced by resolve. "Varen," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly, but she stood taller, her silver hair glinting as if defying the darkness. "I suspected, but I didn't want to believe. He's not just betraying me, but all of Eldery." She stepped closer to Jake, her gaze proud yet tinged with a plea. "Are you certain, Hawk? This isn't something we can take back." Jake nodded, his eyes unwavering. "I don't make claims without proof, Princess," he said, his tone pragmatic but sincere. "Varen has people in the palace. Kelsey could be one of them. We need to move now." Before Zara Lynn could respond, a faint crack echoed from the stronghold's entrance. Jake reacted instantly, drawing his dagger and pushing Zara Lynn behind him, his body taut like a predator. A slender elderly female emerged into the moonlight, her pale purple skin marking her as a hybrid of elderly and Vren blood. She raised her hands, signaling no threat. "Don't attack," she said, her voice smooth but urgent. "I'm Kira, the princess's aide. I'm here to help." Zara Lynn stepped out from behind Jake, her eyes assessing Kira. "Kira," she asked, her voice laced with suspicion, "why are you here? And how do you know of this stronghold?" Kira knelt on one knee, her gaze steady. "My princess, I've been tracking Varen for years," she said, her voice low but resolute. "He killed my father, a Vren diplomat, for supporting the Alliance. I swore to stop him from destroying Eldery. When the attack happened, I knew you'd come here. This secret entrance is recorded in the Royal Archives, and I've studied them." She glanced at Jake, her eyes appraising. "This human is right. Varen has ordered your capture. His forces are surrounding the palace." Jake's brow furrowed, his gaze sweeping over Kira, noting her stance. No visible weapons, but her right hand was tucked in her cloak, possibly concealing a blade. "Personal motives don't earn my trust," he said, his voice cold. "How do we know you're not Varen's spy?" Kira offered a faint smile, pulling a small device from her cloak that projected a holographic map of the palace, marked with Varen's true positions. "Because I'm bringing you an escape," she said confidently. "There's an ancient tunnel beneath this stronghold, leading to the northern jungle. But we must go now, before Varen's hunters find the entrance." Zara Lynn looked at Jake, her eyes seeking his judgment. "I trust Kira," she said, her voice proud but sincere. "She served me for years." "Hawk, what do you think?" Jake tightened his grip on the dagger, weighing his options. His instinct screamed caution, but time was against them. "Fine," he said, his voice low. "But if you betray us, Kira, you won't see the sunrise." He turned to Zara Lynn, his gaze softening slightly. "Princess, stay close to me. Let's move." Kira led the way through the stone hallway, activating a slab to reveal the tunnel. Jake moved ahead of Zara Lynn, dagger at the ready, his eyes scanning the darkness. Zara Lynn followed, her breathing steady, her golden eyes flashing with resolve. The ancient tunnel opened, revealing the crimson eldery desert, its sand glinting like dried blood under the dim moonlight. The howling wind carried faint green energy sparks, heralding a deadly sandstorm set to erupt by noon. "Jake, Hawk," Anderson stepped out, dagger gripped tightly, his deep blue eyes scanning the horizon where an ancient fortress loomed. The stronghold housing the Hollow Vox, a device to summon Alliance reinforcements and thwart Varen's coup. Princess Zara Lynn followed, her silver hair dusted with sand, her golden eyes sharp, her ancestral necklace humming faintly. Kira, her pale purple skin marking her Vren heritage, clutched the holographic device, her eyes shadowed with worry. Jake crouched behind a boulder, feeling the sand's vibrations. The storm was 5 hours away. The heat scorched his skin, their water flask nearly empty. "The Hollow Vox is our only shot," he said, his voice low and sharp. "Call in reinforcements, and we stop Varen before he breaks the alliance." "Zara Lynn, how does your necklace open the fortress gate?" Zara Lynn knelt, her emerald fingers tracing a vein of water in the sand. "The necklace is the key," she said, her voice proud, eyes flashing. "The Hollow Vox requires royal blood and a ritual through it, a relic passed only to the heir. Varen lacks that power, even as my brother. A cave in the western gorge leads to the fortress, but this desert doesn't forgive. The sandstorm will erase all traces if we're too slow." Kira gripped the holographic device, her voice trembling. "Princess, the Hollow Vox might be dead. It's millennia-old technology. If it fails, we'll die in this sand. Why not return to the forest, find shelter?" Jake turned, his gaze cutting like a blade. "The forest is a death trap. Varen will expect us to retreat," he said, his voice firm, unyielding. "The Hollow Vox is our chance to live. Look," he pointed to faint ancient runes glowing under the energy sparks on a boulder. "Those are your ancestors' markers, Zara Lynn, guiding us to the fortress. Kira, use the hologram to track the wind, keep us on course." "Can you do it?" Kira hesitated, but Jake's stare compelled her to act. "Yes," she said, her voice low, activating the hologram. "But what if the fortress is a trap?" "Then I'll break the trap," Jake replied, his eyes resolute. "I've led teams through hell and survived. You do your job, I'll do mine." He turned to Zara Lynn. "Princess, lead the way. I'll handle survival." Zara Lynn nodded, a flicker of respect in her eyes. "You don't make empty promises, Hawk," she said, her voice proud yet sincere. "Varen wants the throne, but I'll use the Hollow Vox to call the alliance, keeping Eldery united. Move fast. The desert waits for no one." Jake led the group across the sand, his steps steady despite the searing heat. He paused at a crevice, digging a small pit and using a filter to extract murky water droplets. "One sip," he ordered, passing the tube to Zara Lynn, then Kira. "Conserve it." He rigged a shelter from stone and fabric to block the heat, his eyes scanning the sand. A strange vibration, not from the storm. "Spine scorpions," Jake shouted, pulling the group back. 3 massive scorpions, each 4 meters long, erupted from the sand, their spiked backs spraying green venom. Jake raised his dagger, eyes calculating. "They hunt vibrations. Don't run, move slowly." He guided the group to circle around, stepping lightly, but one scorpion lunged. Jake hurled a rock, distracting it, then leaped forward, plunging his dagger into a chink in its head armor. venom spraying and grazing his jacket. The creature collapsed, and the others retreated into the sand. Kira gasped, eyes wide with terror. "How did you know how to kill it?" Reading the signs, Jake replied, his voice low, wiping venom from his blade. "The sand moved wrong. They were here from the start. Keep the hologram up, Kira, find that cave." He looked at Zara Lynn, his gaze a silent vow. "You okay?" Zara Lynn clutched her necklace, her eyes proud. "I'm not weak enough to need asking," she said, but her tone softened. "You're better than I thought. The cave's 300 meters, go." The gorge emerged, its stone walls trembling faintly as the storm neared. Jake led them into the cave, the light from Zara Lynn's necklace illuminating ancient runes guiding them to the fortress. Outside, the storm roared, red sand blotting the sky. Kira glanced at the hologram, her voice low. "The fortress is close. If the holovox works, Varen loses everything." Zara Lynn stepped forward, her eyes sharp. "He'll face me," she said, her voice like a blade. "The holovox is my declaration of war, with the Alliance, not against it. Are you ready, Hawk?" Jake checked his dagger, his eyes unyielding. "I was born to fight," he said, his voice low. "The fortress is the first step. Varen is the last. Let's move." The frigid cave led the group into the main hall of the ancient elderly fortress, where colossal stone pillars, etched with glowing runes, rose like the spine of a slumbering beast. The green light from Zara Lynn's necklace illuminated the holovox, a spherical device hovering at the hall's center, glinting like a metallic heart. Jake Hawk. Anderson stood guard in front, his heirloom dagger gripped tightly, his deep blue eyes scanning every corner, stone doors, shadows, and subtle vibrations. Princess Zara Lynn approached the holovox, her emerald fingers poised to spill blood. But Kira, her pale, purple skin betraying her Vren heritage, froze, her holographic device flickering with encrypted signals. "Someone's here," Kira whispered, her voice trembling, eyes wide with alarm. "The signal, it's too strong." Before Jake could respond, the stone door across the hall rumbled open, and Varen's forces poured in. 30 elderly soldiers in blazing energy armor, weapons glowing red, led by Varen himself. Tall and imposing, his deep emerald skin gleamed, his golden eyes cold. He clutched a shimmering control device, flanked by 4 hovering combat drones. "Zara Lynn," Varen said, his voice smooth as a blade. "You've arrived just in time to kneel. The holovox will carry my message. Eldery severs ties with the Alliance, and I take the throne." Jake stepped forward, his dagger flashing, his gaze sharp as a knife. "She doesn't kneel," he said, his voice low and unyielding. "And you're not touching the holovox. Kira, cover the left. Zara Lynn, get to the device." He scanned the hall, noting 2 side passages, one leading outside, the other to a lower chamber where neutral nobles and troops might be gathered. Zara Lynn stood tall, her eyes blazing with pride. "Varen, you betray royal blood," she declared, her voice thundering, drowning out the hum of the drones. "The holovox is my legacy, not a tool for your coup. Drop your weapons, or face the consequences." Varen sneered, activating his device. The drones fired red energy beams at Jake. He rolled, dodging the blasts, and tossed a smoke grenade from his pack, the haze obscuring their view. "Zara Lynn, activate the holovox," he shouted, charging Varen's soldiers, his dagger slicing through a gap in one's armor, dropping him instantly. Kira used her holographic device to jam signals, causing one drone to waver, but a beam grazed her shoulder, purple blood seeping out. Zara Lynn sprinted toward the holovox, her necklace glowing fiercely, but a squad of soldiers blocked her path. She raised her hand, a burst of green light forming a shield that repelled them. "I am the heir," she roared, her voice proud, her eyes locking onto the soldiers. "You serve Eldery, not a traitor. Stand with me, or lose everything." Some soldiers hesitated, their eyes wavering, but Varen triggered his device, their armor flaring, forcing compliance. "Naive," he mocked. "The nobles and army have chosen me. You have only this human and a useless aid. He lunged, his energy-armored fist sending Jake crashing into a pillar. Jake gritted his teeth, blood trickling from his lip, but sprang up, his eyes unyielding. You underestimate humans, Jake growled, hurling a rock to distract a drone before charging Varen. He dodged a swing, spinning his dagger to slash a cable in Varen's armor, sparks flying. The drones fired again, one beam hitting Jake's leg, dropping him to a knee, but he crawled forward, eyes fixed on Varen's control device. Kira, keep jamming, he yelled. Kira, despite her pain, activated the hologram, causing two drones to collide and explode. Seizing the chaos, Zara Lynn darted down the side passage to the lower chamber, where neutral nobles and troops were gathered. She stood before the crowd, her necklace blazing, her voice resonant as a tide. "People of Eldery," she declared, her golden eyes sweeping over every face. "Varen leads you to war, to ruin. I bring peace with the Alliance. The Holovox will summon reinforcements to protect Eldery. Who stands with me?" An elderly noble stepped forward, eyes skeptical. "Varen says the Alliance weakens us," he said. "What do you offer beyond words?" Zara Lynn gripped her necklace, its light projecting the royal sigil onto the wall. "I offer our legacy," she said, her voice low and powerful. "And a human out there, crossing deserts, slaying beasts, to bring me here. If he believes in Eldery, so must you." Her words ignited a spark. Several nobles nodded, and neutral troops began turning against Varen. Back in the hall, Jake, blood soaking his armor, crawled closer to Varen. Varen smirked, raising the device. "Die," he spat, drones targeting Jake. But Jake, eyes flashing, threw his heirloom dagger, its blade etched with fallen comrades' names, striking the device, sparks erupting as the drones plummeted like stones. The armored soldiers staggered, their suits losing control. Jake rose, despite the pain, and tackled Varen, pinning him down. Varen roared, drawing an energy blade, but Zara Lynn returned, leading the neutral troops. She stood on a dais, her eyes proud, her voice echoing through the fortress. "Eldery doesn't need war to be great. We will be stronger with our allies." Her words were fire, and Varen's soldiers knelt, nobles bowing. Varen, isolated, his eyes wild with panic, was bound by the neutral troops. Jake, panting, retrieved his dagger, his gaze meeting Zara Lynn's. "Job's done," he said, his voice low, a faint smirk breaking through. Zara Lynn nodded, her eyes sincere. "You kept your word, Hawk," she said. "Eldery owes you." The Holovox flared to life, the Alliance's signal resonating. The fortress fell silent, but the air thrummed with hope. The ancient Eldery fortress, once shaken by the hum of drones and the clash of energy weapons, now basked in the gentle glow of its rune-etched stone pillars. Varen, his hands bound by energy cords, knelt in the main hall, his golden eyes dulled, stripped of their former arrogance. Zara Lynn's loyalist troops stood in formation, their armor gleaming, guarding the Holovox, the device that had successfully transmitted a signal to the Alliance, ensuring reinforcements were on their way. Princess Zara Lynn, her silver hair shimmering, her ancestral necklace aglow, stood on a raised dais, her proud golden eyes sweeping over the gathered nobles and soldiers. Jake Hawk Anderson, dried blood crusting his armor, his heirloom dagger sheathed, stood beside Kira, his deep blue eyes quietly observing. Kira, her shoulder bandaged, offered a faint smile, her holographic device now displaying the Alliance's responding signal. "Varen, you have betrayed Eldery," Zara Lynn declared, her voice resonating like a tide, silencing the nobles' murmurs. "You sought war, but I choose peace. The royal court will judge you for treason." She raised her hand, the royal sigil from her necklace projecting onto the wall, affirming her authority. The crowd bowed, even the once hesitant nobles. Varen was led away, his silhouette vanishing behind the stone doors, leaving the fortress in the stillness of victory. The coronation came swiftly, the Eldery palace aglow with crystal spires and luminescent trees. Zara Lynn, now queen, donned a flowing blue robe, her necklace blazing like a flame, as she entered the throne hall. Jake stood below, his armor replaced by an alliance jacket, the scar on his cheek stark under the light. Kira, now a royal aide, held a holographic device recording the ceremony. Nobles and alliance representatives applauded, though some cast wary glances at Jake, a human in the heart of Eldery. Zara Lynn took the throne, her golden eyes locking onto the crowd. Eldery will stand strong within the alliance, she said, her voice low and resolute. I will forge peace, not war. We learn from our past, but we build our future. Her gaze softened as it met Jake's. Today, I honor Jake Hawk Anderson, who crossed deserts, slew beasts, and fought for Eldery. I name him my advisor and personal protector. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some nobles frowning. A human beside the queen? Jake stepped forward, his eyes unyielding. I don't seek honors, he said, his voice low, carrying through the hall. But if the queen trusts me, I'll stand by her for Eldery and the alliance. He bowed slightly, but his gaze met Zara Lynn's, a silent vow. The nobles fell silent, but applause from the soldiers and Kira broke the tension, spreading through the hall. Night fell, and Jake and Zara Lynn stood on the royal balcony, gazing at Eldery's star-filled sky, its two moons hanging like the eyes of ancestors. The breeze carried the scent of glowing trees, mingling with the palace's distant hum. Zara Lynn touched her necklace, its green light softening. Prejudice won't fade easily, she said, her voice low, eyes distant. A queen and a human. What will they say? Jake's lips curved, his deep blue eyes reflecting the stars. What they say doesn't matter, he replied, his voice low and certain. We crossed the desert, took down Varen, kept Eldery standing. If they can't see that, I'll make them see, through action like always. Zara Lynn turned to him, her eyes glinting, half proud, half sincere. You're stubborn, Hawk, she said, her voice tinged with teasing. But that's why I trust you. Let's build a universe where species unite, no matter the cost. Jake nodded, his gaze locking onto hers, then lifting to the sky. A universe of peace, he said, his voice low, a promise. I'm ready. Under the stars, the Eldery fortress stood resolute, a symbol of new hope as two figures on the balcony faced the future.